songwriter and recording artist from Southern California. She grew up with an intense love for music that runs in her veins and eventually got serious about her music career in her early teenage years. Kendall signed her first record deal at 17 years old and released her debut album, Original, in 2016. What some may not know about Kendall is that she was born anaphylactic and is severely allergic to 95% of all foods. She has a feeding tube in her stomach to get her nutrition and has almost lost her life several times due to her medical condition. In spite of this, Kendall has been a well-known advocate for those with disabilities and uses her music as her mission to inspire others with disabilities and let them know they are never alone.
You were born anaphylactic. What does that mean, and how does that affect your body?
So basically, day 2 of life, I just stopped breathing, and they weren't really sure why. The doctors continued to try to figure it out. My parents were pretty much terrified. It just continued to keep happening. And then on top of that, I would aspirate fluid into my lungs a lot, and they weren't really sure why that was happening. So then after a lot of trial and error, because there really wasn't that much information almost 24 years ago about anaphylactic allergies, they finally figured out after testing when I was several months old that I was anaphylactic, which means deathly allergic to 95% of all food. So what was happening, and the reason that I would continuously stop breathing, is my mom, I was allergic to her breast milk. So it was like they were continuously feeding me my allergens and then I would react. So basically that continued to happen throughout my life because I only had this tiny minuscule amount of food that I could eat and I couldn't get nutrition from it properly. So there wasn't a lot of information back then about feeding tubes, and so my parents really fought it because they were like, well, we don't want her to like be handicapped or to have this thing that is an extra set of just problems on top of the allergies. So they were like, okay, how do we fight this? And then eventually, once I was 4.5, I weighed like 26 pounds. I was failure to thrive, and they just said, if you do not get your child a feeding tube, like she's going to die. Like she's not getting nutrition, she's not absorbing any nutrition, because I had a malabsorption issue on top of it. So finally I got my feeding tube and my life began, to be completely honest. It saved my life. And so because of my anaphylactic allergies, that's where things get kind of tricky. I primarily, for the most part, eat through my feeding tube, which is I'm on my pump, which right now I'm not, or I do like gravity feeds throughout the day. And that's kind of what keeps me sustained. And then also what I'm not allergic to, I can eat by mouth. It's just not very much or anything of really nutritional value. And so anaphylaxis to me, unfortunately, because my condition is so severe, I've gone into anaphylactic shock many times from just touching something with my allergen on it and wiping my eye, like not knowing. And that's why it's a little bit of a different lifestyle. I kind of just have to literally think about things and be careful everywhere I go, which is why the pandemic has honestly kind of been normalcy for me, because I'm like, I already wore a mask a lot of the places that I went, and I already wore gloves in like major public places. So it was kind of like, once everyone started doing that, I was like, oh, this is like, welcome to the club. But yeah, it's definitely a different condition. It's not something that you see every day, but I feel really blessed to still be able to at least eat some foods that I'm not allergic to, and also just grateful that anaphylactic shock has not taken my life yet, and I don't think that it will, because I'm prepared and ready to go at all times. But
Even
yeah,
pen and all of that.
oh yeah, we have several of them, which is crazy because apparently in the last 2 years we've been going through this major epinephrine shortage and it's not the epinephrine that's in shortage, it's the auto-injectors, because of crazy prescription drug prices and stuff like that. And so yeah, we have a lot of those, lots of auto-injectors, and yeah, it's it just means being prepared at all times. Always, I don't really eat out because obviously there's not that much I can have anyway. There's probably like 2 restaurants I can go to and they have to like specially make my food. But I'm prepared at all times for all things.
So yeah, so what can you eat?
Yeah. So it's not a very long list, but it's a list that I'm very grateful for. So I can,
you're not allergic to.
yes. And I can have, I can have like chicken, rice, potatoes. Thank goodness. Actually, the only allergen I ever did actually outgrow, thank God, is dairy. So that's actually what my prescription formula is based off of, is whey protein. And that's how I sustain. So and thank goodness I can have chocolate. So that's like my treat, and like the thing that I like enjoy. And for the most part, that's pretty much it. Like I can't have a lot by mouth, which is why I have the tube. But I am grateful for what I can eat, because obviously a lot of the kids that I mentor, a lot of the people that I call my friends, they can't really eat at all by mouth. So I look at it as the silver linings, and I just grateful for the things that we can have.
Of course. So, and I know we're going a little bit in depth in this into this question, but so how does your like day-to-day life look like with your feeding tube? It's clearly external. So
yes,
you're out, like, you're wearing it.
It's on. I mean, obviously at all times.
Like, how does that all work? So, and you can just have, like, for instance, tomato sauce. It goes through your feeding tube, or is it just that, or is it other like random like liquids? I'm not so sure.
So, unfortunately, it doesn't really change based off of, an allergen is an allergen. So whether it's going directly into my stomach or by mouth, I'll still go into shock. So I still can't have allergens, but the reason that the tube is super helpful is it's forces my body to absorb nutrients it gets, and then also is a way to put, kind of like you get an IV when you're in the hospital. Well, it's the same sort of thing, except for it's feeding you instead of giving you IV nutrition. So day to day, kind of how I sustain, and it does change. Like right now, I'm going through a period where, again, the malabsorption issues in my stomach, my body's not really holding the nutrients that it gets. Oftentimes, it just gets rid of everything that I put in it. And so I have to go on my pump a lot more often, because it's a slow drip that kind of forces your body to absorb. It doesn't give it the opportunity to just like push like heavy meals. So the way that I sustain is, it's one of 2 things. Either I hook up, which I'm not hooked up right now, obviously, to my feeding tube pump, which is like kind of a teeny tiny little, like an IV type pump that you carry with you. And then like a little bag with the formula, and it's a continuous drip. So I've been on that. I'm usually on that all throughout the day. And it depends, because I was getting really used to not having to be on it, and just tube feeding throughout the day. So that's called gravity feed. So that's when it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and you just manually hook the tube up. It's obviously in my stomach. You hook it up, and then you just manually pour the formula in and let it absorb. And it takes about like 10 to 15 minutes on average. And I usually do that about 4 times a day. But because doing it all at once, my body's not really absorbing it right now, I'm back on my feeding pump during the day, and then I just do a couple of gravity feeds, and that helps my body stay like alive and thriving. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm very lucky that with my feeding pump, it can disconnect. So I can have some normalcy and be active. And it's good too, because even when I am attached to it, it's in a backpack. So I just like hook it up and go out my normal day for the most part. But it is a little frustrating in the sense that oftentimes I get it hooked on things. Sometimes you end up feeding objects around you instead of your stomach because it unhooks itself. And then the formula goes everywhere and it's a big mess. But yeah, I've learned all the little tricks and tips to not making that mess happen. And yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's a struggle, but it's also the thing that I'm probably most grateful for in life, because it's literally my tube is the reason that I'm here and that I can play music and do the things that I love to do. So my tube is definitely my friend, not my enemy.
But you and I actually, I guess, because when I think about feeding tubes, I think about them like in a hospital, and then I also think about them like, I mean, internally too.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think of it being like external at first. So I was like,
yeah.
oh, you know,
well, it's both.
Like food goes in through, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That
yes.
that goes into your body.
Yeah, and you can some people, it's kind of funny. I have a lot of friends who have EOE disease or FPIES, stuff like that. And because their system basically just doesn't work. You can't swallow food. Like I have actually a lot of friends who can't swallow, like and that's why they have their feeding tube. And it's funny because oftentimes they'll blend their food and then put it through their feeding tube. I don't really often do that because there's not really enough to blend in the first place, but that I can have safely. But right. I think, it's interesting too, because there's a lot of different kinds of tubes. Some people do have the same tube that I have, but just for venting, because it does work that way as well. For me though, obviously it's what's going in. But yeah, it's in my stomach, and some people have GJ tubes, so that's where it goes directly to the intestine. This just goes into my actual stomach organ though. And so yeah, it's helpful sometimes. I will say, like, if I really don't want to take a medication by mouth, like if it tastes really bad or something, I just put it into my feeds so I don't have to taste it. So it's like a secret weapon in that way.
So there's clearly, unfortunately, some disadvantages.
Yeah, of course.
To having this feeding tube. How does, this condition and being anaphylactic affect, family and like social life or meals?
Yeah.
I'm just going out with friends for lunch.
Yeah.
I know a lot of your friends, obviously have similar, are also on feeding tubes.
Yeah.
You're on feeding tubes, so that's a little different, but and like dating and how do you manage all of that?
I think it's a day-to-day battle for sure. Like, I'd be lying if I said it was simple. I think it's something that you have to kind of master over time, and still as an adult there are situations that come up where I'm still learning, and it is different because a lot of times, for some reason, in our society, every gathering is surrounded about food. And that can be frustrating for people that can't eat or have allergies or have dietary restrictions, just because that's a lot of people's way of connecting. Like, obviously, if a guy asks me on a date, he's like, can I take you to dinner? And then that conversation automatically has to happen. It's like, well, sort of. But oftentimes what I'll do is, there are a tiny handful of places that I can go safely. And I'll oftentimes like offer to go to that place where I can have something. Or oftentimes I just go to outings with friends and family, places that I can't eat, and I'll just bring my food or my feeding setup with me, and do that there. And it is hard just because not a lot of people have any education or understanding about feeding tubes, let alone anaphylactic allergies. I think people think of allergies, they think of like the sniffles and hives. They don't fully understand that your body will shut down. Like, my throat swells, my face starts to resemble a Bratz doll. It just blows up. And I just stop breathing. My blood pressure drops and I suffocate, basically, is what happens when I go into shock. And so I think that's part of the reason, if you have any kind of condition, but especially one like this, you do have to be your own advocate. And sometimes it is uncomfortable because you have to, at family gatherings, I can't count how many times I've had to be like, I cannot be around this. Like, if there's peanuts or tree nuts in the air around me, like, I could stop breathing. So I have to be really careful. And I have to explain to a lot of people about a lot of things that I wouldn't normally want to. But I also think that it's also given me a strength because it's taught me how to advocate for myself and how to speak up. And so, yeah, everything looks different, from friendships to especially relationships, because obviously whoever the person that I'm with, they have to understand the situation just as much as me. They have to know what to do if I were to go into shock. They have to know what not to eat if I like am kissing them, like stuff like that, like things that people don't normally think about. We have to think about all of it. So it's definitely a journey, and I'm learning every day how to kind of manage it all as best as I can. But I've been blessed to have it my whole life, whereas a lot of people get diagnosed out of the blue and then it's this whole life change. So for me, I've been able to kind of ride with the punches, or roll with the punches, as they say.
Of course. No, it's difficult. And then, I mean, it's all food related. Are there any like drinks that you can't have, or like could you know, or is it, I mean, obviously dairy, you know, you have with coffee or you know, certain things, but you know, I'm just saying iced tea, or like, can you have that? Or
I can
drink.
I don't really drink much like sodas and stuff like that, just because I already deal with like acid reflux, so a lot of carbonated.
But you could if you wanted to.
But yeah, if I wasn't allergic, there's a couple, like I think I can have like 7-Up. And
I don't like soda at all. I just used iced tea because I like
and then there's also like, as an adult, a lot of like that's the other thing, a lot of alcoholic beverages actually have a lot of my allergens in them. So the only one that I supposedly can safely have is vodka, because it's from potato somehow. But I've actually, even for like my 21st birthday, everyone was like, are you gonna try it? And I was kind of like, the main reason I honestly didn't is because within my feeding tube site, I also have an ulcer in my stomach, and anything acidic or alcohol or anything like that burns really, really bad. So I was just like, yeah, not really wanting to ruin my birthday. But I definitely, like, you have to learn those things. Like, that's something that's it's really sketchy and scary for kids that have food allergies when they're like in high school, especially in their college years, because there's so many allergens that are hidden in drinks. And so having to educate myself and also my peers on like, this is the stuff that could kill me if I'm not paying attention or if I'm not thinking about. But I do drink a lot of water, and I do love hot chocolate and chocolate milk. I do love those things. So I do drink those.
Okay. No, I don't drink alcohol. I've just never acquired the taste of alcohol.
Yeah.
I do take medications, so I don't want to mix the two.
Exactly. Yeah.
My 21st birthday. I mean, obviously I've had sips here and there because I'm not in the same situation as you, but yeah, it's like really not that exciting anyways. Alcohol.
I know. I think when you grow up and you have something that like a health struggle, I think you just have like a different appreciation for life, where like, I don't need that to have fun. Like I can be the life of the party without it.
Okay, so you've had your feeding tube since you were 4 years old.
Yes.
So was there a reason why you didn't get a feeding tube until you were 4 years old? And like, what was the process like for your parents when doctors confronted them saying that you basically needed a feeding tube? Your life it was challenging.
Yeah, it's a whole it was a whole thing, because they really fought it. And also for a while, like, I was doing okay. Once they realized what it was I was reacting to, they were trying everything. Like, I can still like have memories as a toddler of my mom trying to force me to drink rice milk, because it had like nutritional value, and it was one of the one things that I could have. And my parents, I think honestly the biggest thing is it was the way that it was explained. Like, it was a feeding tube was explained to them like it was a disability in itself. And they kind of explained it to my parents, like, once she's hooked up to this, like, she'll be handicapped for the rest of her life. And they didn't really explain it like, oh, this will actually enrich her life and make it better. And so my parents were trying to find a way around it. Like, is there any way that we can help her get healthy without having to do this major surgery? So they did fight it for a long time, but once it got to the point where it just was clear that like I could not survive without it. They were just like, okay, well, this is a no-brainer. We have to do this, and now we will deal with what that means as far as adapting to it. But yeah, it's definitely a process, and I think it's a lot better now, and that's something that my parents, especially my mom and I, have been really passionate about now, is finding families that are in that predicament. Like we just went through it recently with one of the little girls that I love and mentor. She was in the exact same position, literally 4.5 years old. It got to the point where they could not fight it anymore. And it was really cool in a way to be able to go back and like hold someone's hand through that process, because we didn't have that. So to be able to say like, hey, I know you're really scared about this, but I promise you this is a good thing. This is going to change her life. And it did. And it's so cool to see that, because it was explained like it was sort of like a death sentence, when in reality it was like the day that my life started. It really was.
Yeah. So you are basically FAACT ambassador.
Yes, fact.
For the food allergy and anaphylactic connection team. Can you tell us a little bit about your role there, and why you decided to become this ambassador?
Yes. So ever since I was really small, I originally, these organizations were called like completely different names back then, and most of them didn't exist. But I was always really involved in the food allergy community, and I always wanted to be an advocate and speak out for people that had food allergies, because there wasn't anyone doing it. And I just wanted to build like a community. And so from a really young age, I think I was about 10 when I did like my first like awareness walk, and like gave my first like little speech or whatever. But throughout my life, I always partnered with organizations that like I believed in, and I saw them making a difference. And so when FACT came around, it was actually started by someone that I had previously worked with in the food allergy community. Her name's Eleanor, and she started FACT because she has a son that's highly anaphylactic, and she saw the need for this community and for education in the community. And so from day one, she was like, we're gonna do this, and we need faces, we need people that are gonna help us put this on. And so it's been such an honor, honestly, to partner with them for so many years, because I've gotten the privilege of watching kids go from really, really tiny children to like these adults that are advocating for themselves, and getting to put on these conferences every year. I mean, before COVID happened, obviously, we do a camp as well for people with food allergies, because that's often one of the things that you don't get to do when you grow up with allergies, is go to like camps and stuff like that, because it's not really safe. And so it's amazing. I love what FACT does, because their sole focus is mostly on education and just getting resources out there for either people that have food allergies or people that need to be educated about anaphylaxis in the first place. So it's been so great. And I think being an advocate is so important, because of so many people that didn't have a voice. And now they do. And I love watching that happen. I love getting to like work with kids and also adults, and just be inspired by other people that have been down this journey before me, and can be, hey, I know you're going through this, and I've been through it too, and this is how you deal with this situation. So it's an awesome organization. So if anyone is listening that has food allergies or wants to be educated about it, definitely check out FACT, because they're awesome.
That sounds like an amazing organization. And
Thank
I mean,
you.
like you said, community and support is, very important when you have a medical condition. And as somebody who's gone through something, like obviously being anaphylactic like yourself, or just any type of disability or difference, has overcome their challenges or is compensating through X, Y, and Z, and obviously is mentoring or helping others to get to the same or of a similar place. It's also very rewarding.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone to be a mentor, help out in some way, shape, or form. I think that's
yes, so important.
See, for 13 years, you competed as a U.S. figure skater.
Yes.
So what was the inspiration to skate, and did it have any effect on your body and medical condition?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, as a very fragile, tiny child with a feeding tube, the last thing the doctors thought was a good idea was for me to want to ice skate. They were like, what? And like, of all the things, why would that be the thing that you want to try to do? But at like 5.5, almost 6 years old, I finally convinced my parents. I did not really convince the doctors. They just kind of flat out said, like, this is a bad idea. But I convinced my parents to let me try one class. And I'd always wanted to ice skate. I watched it a lot, oftentimes actually, while I was sick and at home and stuck at home. I would sit in front of the TV and watch ice skating all the time. And I was just in love with the sport. I thought it was like the most incredible thing. And I wanted to be an ice skater so bad. I wanted to do it so bad. And they just continuously kept telling me, like, well, what if you fall in your tube? Or what if your body isn't strong enough to handle that kind of sport? Or what if? And I was just kind of like, I hear you, I hear your statistics, but I'm going to do this. So my parents, they always taught me that if there's something that I have a dream and I set my mind to it, then we will find a way. It might not look like everybody else's way, but we will make a way. And so that's sort of what we did. And I continue to do it. I mean, figure skating shaped who I am as a person in so many ways. And it also completely and totally prepared me for the chaos that is the music industry. The worth ethic that I learned in US figure skating and that I learned throughout all those years of competitively skating is the reason that I feel like I can handle the job that I have now. And it also it all kind of went together, because the whole reason that I loved skating so much and that I did it for so long is because I loved interpreting music. And so it makes a lot of sense now how it all happened in my path. But yeah, it's a beautiful sport. And to answer your question, like, yeah, there were challenges, and for the most part that's kind of why I stopped skating competitively at 16, and then I continued to do some shows and stuff like that until I was around 18 years old. But the main reason that I kind of stopped competitively skating is because my entire skating career was sort of, I would work and then I would get myself back up to the top of my game again and be doing really well, and then I would have a surgery or something medical would happen that would knock me back off again, and then I would work and then I would work myself back up. And so finally at 16 I had another surgery, this time on my feeding tube, and that kind of like knocked me off the ice for a while. And during that time I just like poured myself into music and writing and learning, and I think it all kind of happened the way it had to happen. But I am a really big advocate in the sense that if you have something and they tell you that it's crazy, if you have a disability and there's something you want to do and they're like, there's no possible way, like there is a way. I'm telling you, it might not look anything like everybody else's way. Like my way definitely didn't. I was training constantly with like our Olympians and people that are perfectly healthy, and my journey never looked like that. It was always different, but I still did it because I loved it. And I think if you love something, you can do it. It's just going to take a lot of determination and a lot of proving people wrong.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. And so as a musician, did you know, I mean, when you were little that you loved music and wanted to be a musician, or was it really when you were figure skating competitively and, skating to music and, interpreting that music that you decided, I want to go into music now?
I think, to be completely honest, so my grandparents are both musicians. My grandpa is a gospel opera singer and my grandma is a concert pianist. So I was always around music and I always loved it. I like came out of the womb singing. I was always extra in that way, but I would sing a lot in church with my grandparents and I always loved it. And I always went to music, like when things were going wrong, or I was stuck in the hospital, or like physically I wasn't doing very well, I would get an album and sit there and listen to it over and over and over again. And I think music is what carried me through like every obstacle in my life that I've had to face. And I always knew, like, I remember being really little and having like CDs, and I would sit there and with my little Walkman and listen to it, and then I would sit and like flip through the album insert and read like every single lyric. And I always told myself, I'm like, someday, like, I want to have one of these. I want one of these. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to do that, or how I'm going to do that when I'm constantly ice skating and that's like my entire focus. But I don't know, it's like I always knew. Like, I don't know why I would think that, because it's not like I was spending all my time doing that thing until I was like an older teenager. But for some reason, like, I just knew music was going to be where I ended up. I just didn't really know how. And it makes sense now. It all kind of makes sense. But back then I was just kind of like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but somehow I'm going to do that.
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, I think we all figure out a way in some shape or form to do what we want to do. And what's our passion. And I think it's great that you have such a passion for music, and music therapy is wonderful to people.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Therapeutic. So one of your songs is called Original, and you have like tons of lyrics to the song.
Yes.
But there's one line in particular, but pay no mind to the bricks they throw, 'cause girl, you got a different road. How did that come about when writing the song?
So Original, it originally was a song, obviously, but it actually ended up becoming the album title for my first album, and it became like this memo that just went everywhere I went. It's actually written on my guitar. But Original actually started, that line even in particular. I was a camp counselor actually at a FACT camp for kids that have food allergies, and I met this little girl, and I had already known her mom through advocacy, because her mom's a super amazing advocate. And I met her daughter for the first time. Her name's Avery, and I'd never met a kid that was so similar to myself growing up. I'd never met, we have very similar diagnosis, and throughout that week of getting to know her, I just watched her struggle with so many of the exact same things that I struggled with growing up. And it just got me thinking, like, if I could say anything to her to like prepare her for the journey ahead of her, and like to just tell her it's gonna be okay. Like, your path is never gonna look like someone else's, but that's okay. Like, you have your own road. And that's sort of where Original came from. And it's really cool because fast forward to now, in my music video for Better Is Coming, Avery's actually in the video. So she is one of the scenes at the playground scene where you see the kid sitting by herself eating at the allergy friendly table with her service dog. And so it's so cool because to see, she's 11 years old now, which is so crazy to me because I met her when she was a teeny tiny baby. So it's so cool to see how that song and that journey affected her life. And it makes it so worth it to me that I had to go through what I went through, because I get to be helpful to people in their lives and their journeys now, which is all I really care about at the end of the day. So it's amazing, and it's so cool to see how Original went from this little tiny message just to Avery, and now it's a message for so many people, which is so just inspiring to me, and it's why I write music in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's really inspirational. And this girl Avery, she sounds like an amazing girl.
She is incredible.
Yeah. You also wrote, which clearly we've spoken about, and is a big, I should say, bestseller of your music, is Better Is Coming, which is about struggles and just, that there is light at the end of the tunnel and so forth. So can you tell us what inspired you to create the song, and then just a little bit about what the song, is about, and the message that you want you want people to take away from the song?
Yes, so it's super crazy because this song was written actually on the 17-year anniversary of the day that I got my feeding tube. So I walked into this co-write with these amazing writers and I was really nervous. I'd never really done a co-write before except for like with bandmates. And these two awesome hit songwriters took the time to write with me. So I thought I was walking in the room to just kind of like observe that day. I didn't think I was going to be writing anything, but they were like, what do you want to write about today? And so that, because of what day it was, every year on May 2nd, I celebrate that day because it's the day I got my tube.
It's my birthday.
No way. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's the best day ever.
Yeah.
And so we were celebrating that, and I just kind of mentioned a little bit about my story, and we just kind of, it just started coming, and then the question kept coming of if you could talk to your younger self, what is something that you would say to her? And this message of, you know, better is coming, better days are ahead. This is really scary right now, but there's so much more to the story that you can't see yet. And then it just like, we started writing and like a few hours later we had Better Is Coming. And as soon as we wrote it, I just like fell in love with its message. And I knew it was going to have some kind of major role in my life. I just didn't really know how, whether that was going to be pitching it to another artist or if it was going to be recording it myself. Because that's always an option, like in the industry that I'm in, and I'd never done this co-write thing before. So I was just like, okay. But since I was tiny, like a little girl, I've always wanted to make this music video. It's an idea that I've had since I was little, of showcasing the stories of people with disabilities. And I wanted to do it on this crazy large scale, all while being an independent artist and not having like a major label behind me. And so I could never find the funding. I could never find the just the people with the same passion behind it to help me make this come to life. And so, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you the journey that is Better Is Coming and how long that process took to get this message out there. But when it finally did, which was this year, it was just the greatest thing ever. And I'm super proud of not just the video, but also that song, because I think I allowed myself to be really honest in it. And I think I'm so proud of the message that it stands for other people, whether they have a disability or not, just someone that's struggling. I just wanted to write something that was a beacon of hope in a time where we really need it right now. And so, yeah, my co-writers are amazing, and I am super grateful that we wrote together that day and that this is what came out of it, because it was just so much fun to create.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And it's such a great, inspiring song.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to share it with my community. And we definitely could do other collaborations with the song at a certain point if you'd like, but we can discuss that later.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So Ari Real by American Eagle Outfitters has grown from zero retouching campaign into a movement standing for body positivity, empowerment, and inclusivity. How did you become an Ari Real 2020 change maker?
Oh my goodness. So speaking of that crazy thing, throughout the past few years, because we wrote the song Better Is Coming back in 2018, I, even before that, had been pitching this idea, but once we wrote the song, then it was even more. And I kept applying for grants and stuff like that. And so I've always been a huge fan of Aerie. I'm obsessed with their clothes. I love the fact that they're really positive about breaking the barrier of like what makes a body beautiful, and that all bodies are beautiful, and having disabled models and having adaptive wear. And so I've always been really, really just in love with their company in the first place. And so I was just online shopping and I saw a model of theirs with a colostomy bag. And I thought that was so cool because I'd never, as a person with a feeding tube, I just have never really seen that. Never seen someone is as a model with these things that are similar in medical gear. So I got really excited and I clicked on their website and this opportunity came up for the 2020 Changemakers. And I thought there's no way in heck, but I pitched my idea thinking, what the heck? My friend helped me make a little 2-minute video talking about what I would do if I received their grant and what I wanted to do with Better Is Coming. And then right before I received the information that I had been chosen from them, I had gotten another no from another major situation and grant that I had worked really hard to try to get. And I was devastated, but I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but someday, some way, Better Is Coming will be a music video that showcases people with disabilities. So I found out a few weeks later that I had been chosen as one of the 20 amazing, incredible women that are creating change in this world, that they had funded their projects. And since then, I've been partnering with them to get the word out, obviously to make the music video, but also to showcase people with disabilities and to kind of just inflict this image of body positivity on the world, and that even if you have a disability or you have something that makes you different, that's still beautiful and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And so I'm so honestly, I could not have thought of a better brand or a better partnership for myself and my music than Aerie, because they are one of those companies that just talks about creating change but actually does it and puts their money where their mouth is and really cares about even growing in that area, trying to create a more inclusive space in all areas. So it's been a dream come true, honestly. And yeah, there's also several other change makers this year that they have chosen that are creating incredible change in the disabled community. And I cannot talk about them enough because they're amazing. They're just awesome. And I feel really lucky to be in the company of them.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like a great collaboration, and you're lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I wish I was a part of something like that. It sounds
you never know. I mean,
yeah, you never know. I mean, you never know. Things come your way and you never even think of it.
Yeah.
Life is not a straight line.
No.
Hardships and, bumps in the roads, but there's also lots of surprises. And
yes.
you'll even, learn them more and more as you grow up into your, later 20s.
Sure.
Yeah, no. It's great. And, life's a journey we all have, yeah, we never know what's coming our way, good and bad. Yes, more good than bad, let's hope.
Yes.
So you also advocate for body positivity in your own right, and specifically you enjoy, or something that you take pride in, is showing your feeding tube on your social media platforms. How do you think your own body positivity inspires confidence and self-esteem to others, or your following, I should say?
I think recently, to be honest, every time especially like in partnership with Aerie recently, every time I've decided to show my tube in like a really public way, I've always like had these scary feelings of like, what if people judge it, or what if people don't know what it is, or what if, you have all those insecure feelings. But every single time I've had that mindset, I've thought about like, what if there's a little girl scrolling through her Instagram or scrolling through a magazine or watching TV that was like you were when you were little, and how would it change her life if she saw someone like her? And that's the reason behind me continuously showing my feeding tube. And it took a long time. Like, honestly, I didn't start like posting photos of my stomach showing or anything like that until I was like around 20. I mean, it's been the past few years that I've finally been okay with that. And it's been so insane to watch how something that I was insecure about or I was scared to share and how it has affected other people. Just recently, one of the Avery's little sister, actually, who's also special needs, completely different diagnosis, but she's the one that had to get a feeding tube. And watching her see that and then be like, well, if she's gonna wear a bathing suit and show her tube, well, I can do that, and like I can do this. And to me, that's like the most important thing in the whole world for me. As an artist, I'm proud of my craft and what I do, but I'm way more proud of doing something that's actually benefiting the world. And so if I can, even if it makes me super uncomfortable to try to model because I don't do that, I just do it because I'm like, there could be somebody out there that needs to see that, just like I needed to see it. I mean, I was online, and when I saw that photo of that Aerie model, it like made me feel so confident and so proud. And I just want women to feel that way, whether they have a disability or not. I just want people in general to love themselves and their bodies. And it's a journey that I'm on every day, to be honest. I don't think it's a straight line like you talked about. I think it's, you have to work at it every single day, but I do think it's super important to just love your body, and don't let society tell you that the fact that it's different is wrong. I think different is beautiful. I think that's the biggest thing that I believe at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
So speaking actually on that, different is being beautiful. You state that your disability is a superpower. What do you mean by that statement?
I always say that because I feel like while my disability and my life has been, it's had its share of hurdles and struggles, I think it's also the one thing in this world that's given me this ability to sympathize with other people. It's given me a compassion for people. It's given me a voice that I don't think I would have otherwise had, or known how to use. And I think that's why at the end of the day, I look at it as a superpower, because it can be looked at one of two ways. And I think it depends on the day that you ask me, because there's some days where I'm like, this is really hard. And that's okay to have those days. But I think I always try to keep that in perspective of, if I didn't have this thing that makes me different, then I wouldn't know how to reach all these people. I wouldn't know how to tell them that it's okay to be different. I wouldn't have any reason to get out of bed every day, because my mission is to empower people. And I only have that in my heart because I had to face it myself. So I think, well, it's been hard, and there were definitely my fair share of days where I wish that I was just normal, whatever that means, or healthy. I'm grateful for it, and I think it can be used as a superpower. So all the people that might be watching this, if you have a disability or a health condition or any kind of struggle in general, just know that it can be used as a strength for sure. It's not a weakness. It doesn't have to be a weakness. It can be a superpower.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. And I wish more people looked at disabilities, or differences as we call them, at different enable in a positive light. And that's one reason why we say differences instead of disability, because it adds a positive spin. But
I love whenever I hear that particular thing, even in like my Instagram bio, when I use the word disability, I put like dis has like little like bunny ears on it, and then I just put abilities, because at the end of the day, like, yes, it is the word to describe, but I also just use kind of like you said, I loved when I found your guys' page, the fact that you use that wording, because it is important to accept, like, this is how we advocate for ourselves in using this word disability, but that's not really what it is. It's actually kind of like an extra ability, because
no, of course,
how you look at it.
Yeah, of course. No, absolutely. I totally agree. So what would be a good theme song of your life? Think about it.
Oh dear. I think that it depends on the day, to be completely honest. I think it's different every day. But honestly, if I'm being completely real, Better Is Coming was supposed to be kind of the theme song to my life. I put my entire story into creating that song. And at the end of the day, like, that's what I would say. But I think depending on the day, sometimes it feels like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And then other days, it's like super fun and some Taylor Swift songs. So, you just never really know what you're gonna get. But another actually song that I would think of that I've always loved is Coat of Many Colors by Dolly Parton, because it talks about having something that makes you different that other people are making fun of you for, and using that as a strength and seeing it as beautiful instead of a bad thing. And so, yeah, it's hard as an artist always to answer that question because I think of like 5 million songs in my head at once. But Better Is Coming would probably be the message I would want to send at the end of the day.
I would think so too, but I didn't know if there were any others. And are there any artists in particular? I know you said Dolly Parton, but are there any other artists in particular that that have inspired you to write what you are writing and singing?
I grew up listening to an array of literally all kinds of different types of music, and I think that's really important if you love music and you do want to be a musician or an artist, is to listen to a little bit of everything, because that's kind of what helps you figure out who you are as an artist. But some of my biggest influences were Bruce Springsteen, Dolly, obviously. I listened to a lot of older country like Johnny Cash. And then I also, a lot of like today's artists that I loved, obviously Taylor Swift, because I think that being me and having a guitar and being blonde probably gave that away. But it's just been like her songwriting ability is honestly, I got her first album when I was 11. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe like how fearless this girl is at just like saying exactly what she thinks. I love Bruce Springsteen and artists like that tell stories with their songs. And just as a songwriter, there's so many incredible artists that paved the way for people like me to fall in love with music and try to be an artist ourselves. So yeah, there's a lot. I listen to so many. I like even my workout playlist ranges from like old country to rap to pop to sometimes, I mean, I was a figure skater, so there was classical music. It's crazy, the array of weird different types of music that I listen to, but I love all of it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And, I mean, there's no question that artists definitely are inspired by other artists.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So lastly, what advice would you give to others who want to go into the music industry that also may have a disability or different?
Okay, so first of all, I would say just remember why you started. Never, ever, ever forget that, no matter how far you get into the process, because that is going to be the only thing that keeps you in it. If you forget what that reason is, it's really easy to get wrapped up in this industry and all the things that it promises. But even on top of that, if you do have a disability, it's hard, because oftentimes the opportunities that you're trying to accomplish, you're unfortunately going up against perfectly abled, healthy people. And oftentimes the opportunities and the people in charge of giving those opportunities view you as a liability or an extra effort or extra cost instead of your ability and what you can do. And so I would say just learn to have a really strong voice in that and be unapologetic for who you are, and don't allow like that to discourage you, because those opportunities are still there and you still deserve them and you can still achieve them. It just is a long process. But at the end of the day, if you don't truly love it, don't do anything, because you have to love it, and you have to remember why you love it on the days that you want to die, because some days it is so stressful and it is so extra, and there's been plenty of times throughout even releasing this last song that I was just like, why, how did I get myself into something that is so stressful? And I mean, some days it's so incredibly difficult. But I just remember why I started doing it in the first place, and then there's nothing else that I would want to be doing. So just don't allow anybody's opinions to stick with you. They're just opinions. And just know that you're perfectly capable. You just have to sit. If it means making your fingers bleed sitting there for hours learning to play the guitar or whatever instrument, or studying videos of other artists or other songwriters, or going to school to study your craft, like these are things that are so worth it if you truly love what you do. And just don't ever let anybody tell you you can't, because you definitely can. And just prove them all wrong, because you can.
Yeah, no,
Better is coming.
Yeah, no, I think proving people wrong, I mean, as weird as that may sound, is something that people with disabilities really need to kind of hone in and think about, quote unquote, because I think a lot of doctors and people underestimate others who have a disability. And it's really unfortunate. And
just because some things might not be reachable in the normal sense of what reachable means, but there's always a way, kind of like you said, for growth. There's always a way to show people that, yeah, maybe my disability makes me do things differently than you would do it, but I still did it, and I still did something beautiful in this world. And it's still possible to break barriers and change the way that we're looked at, which is so important.
No, I totally agree. Well, this was so fun, Kendall.
Yes, thank you so much.